Well, welcome back to another edition of the Real Life Finance Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Juergens, and I'm joined today with none other than LaToya Williams. LaToya, thanks for being here today.
Absolutely, Ben. Very excited about this opportunity to talk with you today.
Well, we're glad to have you, and so we're gonna talk to get to know you a little bit, talk about what you do here at the bank, and some advice or suggested coaching that we can offer people out there that are curious in the world that you work in. So, LaToya, to get to know you, can you tell us a bit about your background and how you came to be a wealth advisor as you are today at Old National?
Sure. Happy to do that. So actually, I've actually been in the industry for about 30 years. Hard to believe, right?
Yeah.
I look so young.
Absolutely you do.
Just joking. So actually started my career in the financial industry at 14 years old. 14.
So I got to ask, what would you do at 14?
I have no idea. I'll tell you. So one of my friends got a job at a brokerage firm called Mid-America Brokerage Company in Greencastle, Indiana, my hometown. And she told me that, she's going to be making $10 an hour. That's all I heard was $10 an hour. And I thought, absolutely, sign me up. So I got myself together, walked down to the brokerage company, walked in and said, hi, my name's LaToya, and I'd really be interested in an opportunity at your firm. I really don't know if those were the exact words that came out of my mouth, but whatever I said, it got me in the door. So that was actually my start into the industry. Continued through high school, went to college, and my first job out of college was working at Charles Schwab. Got licensed through Schwab, spent some years there, and then went to a private client group. Spent some years there, and prior to joining Old National, I spent the last 10 years prior to joining Old National. I've been here for about 4 years. I spent the last 10 years working for record-keeping organizations, primarily managing retirement accounts. Joined Old National Bank as a result of being at a nonprofit event, met someone that worked for Old National, didn't really have much background on a community bank per se. Really wanted to get into some philanthropic work, and the person that I met was like, that's all we do at the bank. And that's really how I ended up here, was just through having those conversations. Again, been around this industry for 30 years, and that's kind of how I got here.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, it is all about, developing the relationships and the culture of where you're at, and being from the philanthropic side. It's we do a lot of that here, which is a nice thing. So
yeah.
Well, I can't believe it's already been 3.5, almost 4 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. It feels like yesterday.
It does.
Honestly.
Yeah, and 30 years within the industry. So I know I've been here about 25 now, and it just flies by. So for our listeners, right, if you're young and listening, life goes by quick, correct? Mm-hmm. So how has your journey been since joining Old National 3 or 4 years ago?
Oh my gosh, it's been absolutely amazing. Again, our focus really is being in the community and working with the community, but outside of what we do externally, we are really an internal community. So working with organizations like Women Lead, I was the co-chair for our local chapter of Women Lead. I've participated with the CEO Council here at Old National Bank, and just many other organizations from our ERG standpoint. It's been an amazing journey. I could not imagine working for a finer organization. So it's been great.
So a lot of, we at banks use a lot of acronyms, right? So can you explain to our listeners what CEO Council is and what Women Lead is, just so they're aware?
Sure. So our CEO Council is really a group of diverse individuals from all across our various market segments, or business segments, should I say, that comes together to have conversations with our executive leadership that's really in preparation for taking a greater responsibility or role inside of the bank. We are connected with a senior executive really to give greater mentorship and guidance on what the opportunities are to explore options within the bank. So it's really call it a mentorship program on steroids, really giving you full exposure and access to all of the leaders inside of the bank to really give you that broader picture, that big picture of what we do as an organization.
That's awesome. And I assume CEO Council goes up to the CEO and ultimately makes some changes within the bank too,
Absolutely.
Right? That's good.
Absolutely.
What about Women Lead?
Women Lead is one of our employee resource groups, essentially looking at strategies to help position women inside the bank, providing not just networking opportunities, but really strengthening all aspects of what women do here inside of the organization. One thing that I can say that I'm really proud about, really working on with that Women Lead group is our Woman of the Year. program. It's something that we're going through right now. And essentially, we want to highlight the women that are doing amazing work here inside the bank. So it's a really great way just to strengthen our internal community. Again, that's what we do externally. So something we're proud to do internally as well.
A lot of great things going on.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of a role of a wealth advisor. I speak to people, LaToya, all over our footprint. And I'm amazed that the younger generation is so interested in investments and that whole compound interest and growth and, using your money to make money. So I'd like to ask you as a wealth advisor, what do you enjoy most in your position?
So, I really think about this role as one of the most intimate relationships that you're going to have. You're talking to somebody about their hard-earned money. What I love is being their partner. I look at this as it's not a one-sided relationship. I get to be there for those exciting moments that someone's having in their life, whether it's planning for a child's education, helping a child get through college, or planning for their wedding. But we're also there in those challenging times when relationships change or there is a loss in the family. And so it's really about being that trusted partner to that individual and helping them make every financial decision that they can.
I think that's a great piece to tell because it is an intimate relationship with your advisor. I mean, you are getting to know them, their families, their stories. And I always stress how important it is to have a trusted advisor, right? Somebody that you can go to and so they know your strategy and you know theirs and you can put them on a pathway to achieve their long-term goals. And I think so many people, a lot of times, we're in a world now where people like to do things on their own. And I get that, and that's fine. But I think the power of having somebody on your side is so key. So I appreciate you sharing that. So in your world of 3.5 to 4 years here and then your experience prior to, I'd like you to share a memorable moment, LaToya, or an experience or success story from your career that kind of stands out.
Yeah, I think one of the most memorable moments for me, and I'll share one from here at OMB. When I started working at Old National, I spent a little bit of time with our CEO, Jim Ryan. And he said, if you ever need anything, give me a call. And you hear things like that and you think, oh, that's a nice tagline, right? Give me a call. Like, I'm not going to be able to call the CEO of the corporation. And, something, I had an idea or a thought on my mind. And I was like, I just wonder if this was really real. And so I reached out to him and he said, absolutely, let's get some time on the calendar. And that just spoke volumes to me about the character and the authenticity of the leadership we have here at the bank. And it's just one of those most valuable aspects of being here at this organization. It's not a success story, I should say, but it was a memorable moment for me.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, well, Jim's going to be one of our upcoming guests here shortly. So same thing. I called him and said, hey, you want to do this? And he's like, sign me up. So it is neat to see the leadership take interest in not only what our employees do, but, helping the bank grow in certain efforts as well. So that's fantastic. Well, it's nice to get to know LaToya from a personal side. So I appreciate you sharing that information. So I want to talk a little bit about the strategy of building wealth. And I know we can't give, financial guidance or anything like that today, but as I meet with a lot of, actually all generations, but the younger ones seem to really be invested in wealth building, and which excites me, to be honest, because I didn't know much about this when I was that age. So as working with people that have an interest in working with a wealth advisor, what are some of the first steps someone should take when they decide to get on this pathway of starting to build wealth?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ben. In the time that I've been doing this, there are two things that I've never heard someone say. They've never said that I started too early, and they've never said that I've saved too much. So you're never really too early to start creating a plan for yourself. And really that's what it's about. It's really, let's make a plan. Let's understand, what are your short-term goals? What are the things that you need to accomplish in the near term? And then what are those long-term goals? What are some of those major purchases that you're going to be considering making? And what do you want to do when you're done working? That's really the first place that we want to start, is really understanding and creating a plan for you. The next thing that we want to think about...
Can I ask real quick on that?
Sure.
So as you talk about some of these major milestones, what are some of the ones that you see that people, that really sparks them of reasons to build that long-term or short-term? What are some of the examples?
Sure. So an example of that would be, hey, I'm thinking about starting a family. If you're starting a family and you're going to have a child, I think the recent estimates show that the cost, and we don't like to think about having children in terms of the cost, but they do cost a little bit of money. It's about a little over $300,000 that someone needs to be prepared for to accommodate this child
That's
throughout
per
the
child,
trajectory. Yes,
right?
per
Yeah.
child. So if you're going to have
It used to be
five,
like $100,000. Now it's
yeah,
darn inflation,
it's
right? You can see
pretty-
it more expensive.
it's pretty steep. And so they want to think about that. What are those things that I can be doing to prepare that child for success from an education or whatever those things that they're going to need to take care of for their child. The other things are, starting a relationship. If you're starting a relationship or ending a relationship, there are financial considerations that you are going to have in mind. If you're someone that is receiving an inheritance or a large bonus, there are strategies or things that we want to think about. What are we going to use this for? And so things like that. There are many life situations that can arise in someone's life that should prompt them to want to have a conversation with a financial advisor.
That's a good point. I lost my dad a few months back, and thinking about that, it's not only a hard time dealing with the loss of an individual, but then the financial side of it. And I was so glad my dad kind of took care of everything, but it's those emotional things. And I think people spend money emotionally, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have an emotional day. What do people go do to make themselves happy? They buy something, right? So the more that you have a plan in place, it kind of helps alleviate making big decisions based on emotions. So working with an advisor like yourself, you can kind of plan for those big steps as they come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Having that plan in place is key.
I know you mentioned like college savings. I remember we set up our 529s the day that our kids were born. It was like before you start buying diapers and food and all those things that because you find excuses later on. So before that, you can hit those before, right? I think the better. So you talked about the ability of starting early and never too early to start. So let's say some of our listeners maybe, they're a little bit later on in life and they think they're too late. Is there ever a too late to start investing?
Oh, there's never a too late. There's never a too late. Again, it's all about creating a strategy and a plan. And so if someone is starting, let's say they're 50 years old and they've got, 15 years to work, well, we can create a plan and a strategy to help you reach the goals that you want to reach. Now, we may need to be a little bit more aggressive in terms of the assets that we're saving, or maybe a bit more realistic in terms of what we're going to actually do in retirement. But there's certainly a strategy to put in place.
So never too young, never too late.
Absolutely
I like
not.
Just act on it, right?
Just
That's
act.
the key.
That's the key.
Perfect. So we've talked about some of the successes to help people get to that wealth building. So what are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make as they, when they first start this strategy of wealth building?
Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes that I see is, lack of diversification. It's funny, but people would come to me and say, LaToya, I've got all of these statements. I've got assets here, and four banks and, other financial institutions. They're like, I'm diversified. I'm like, well, these are a lot of statements, but that doesn't necessarily equal diversification.
Right.
We need to look at the asset classes. What are the specific investments that you're utilizing? And so just because you have assets at different places doesn't necessarily equal diversification. So having all of your assets in one specific asset class is one of the biggest mistakes. And I like to think of it like a diet. If I go to McDonald's, Burger King, and Fridays and have burger and fries, I've gone to 3 or 4 different places.
I like
but
that.
That's not a well-balanced diet.
Right.
So we want to look at things like stocks, fixed income assets, and potentially some real estate. Also,
Right.
Spreading all of your money amongst a broad asset class essentially helps mitigate risk when the market is volatile.
I think that's the big piece is it's the risk, right?
Yeah.
What is your risk tolerance?
Yes.
And I know when you're younger, you can probably afford to have more risk. And as you get closer to retirement, you need to lower that risk. So I think that's where the advising piece can really come into play. Because I remember when I started at the bank when I was 19, about 25 years ago, I remember I got my 401k book, right? And we'll talk a little bit about 401ks in a moment. But I was like, I don't understand any of this. So I just made a dabble myself. And, over the years of talking to advisors, I was like, okay, I really get this now. And as much as I'd love to be an expert in advising, I'm going to find people that are like yourself. And I think having that partner can really help give a well-balanced diet to your money so that you can grow it over time in a strategy that works for you. So very good. So, okay, how important is it? And I'm a big fan of financial goals, specific, measurable, attainable, result-oriented, time-driven, that SMART goal mentality. How important is it to set financial goals for you, for your clients? And what are some examples of realistic goals for maybe people just starting?
Yeah, I think that's the first step. I think it's key. If you don't have a goal, it's kind of like me getting in my car and not knowing where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going to end up, right? And so having goals is absolutely key. For someone just getting started in the process of creating, thinking about creating wealth for themselves, number one is schedule an appointment to meet with someone. That's really simple. It's quite easy. And you mentioned, having a retirement account or a banking relationship somewhere. There are probably resources that are offered through either your retirement account or your banking relationship where there's no obligation or cost for you to make an appointment and meet with someone.
Agree.
So I think that's, an easy, obtainable goal that someone can set for themselves. If you're out there and you're thinking about this for 2025, make that your priority.
Yeah.
Go into your human resources office, ask what resources are available, go to your bank. Just learn.
I mean, I think every retirement account has an 800 number you can call, right?
Absolutely.
And I don't think people take advantage of that enough. I've talked to a lot of folks when I'm doing these classes, and I think a lot of people are just afraid to ask because then they feel, I don't want to use the wrong word, but a lot of people tell me like, well, I feel stupid asking this question. I'm like, don't. The bad part is to not ask the question. And I think that is a big misunderstanding or a misconception that people kind of leave your ego at the door, right? If you have goals that you want to achieve, work with an expert, right? It just makes sense to me.
It's analysis paralysis. That's what I think it is. Like there's so much to think about. People get paralyzed to think that what to do. But, if you think about some of the most influential people, athletes are some of the most influential people in the world or superstars. Most people have a coach.
Yeah.
LeBron James has a coach, and he's one of the most amazing athletes in the world, but he still wants someone to help provide guidance to the things that he can't see. And so that's kind of the way that I look at it. So again, utilizing those resources that you have available and just have a conversation with someone.
I agree. I agree. Perfect. Thank you. All right. So as we talk about setting financial goals, which is a wonderful thing, I've got 4 children and they're starting to dabble in the world of social media and things like that. And one of the things I see is when you said set realistic goals, so many people go on, whether it's TikTok or whatever, and they see these people get rich quick. Can it happen? Sure, right? But I think the strategy of that long-term, gain. So for those that don't follow us, by the way, we're on TikTok and Instagram and promoting educational things. So make sure you follow us. But do you see that as often or as well as people try to, role model themselves or see themselves as these people that, these influencers out there? And there's some really good ones too. But there's also some that maybe have some questionable things too. So we got to be careful there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we certainly have to be careful in this information age that there's a lot of data out there.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important to have a relationship with a financial professional because it allows you to kind of fact check.
Yeah.
And that's what we need in this day and age is the ability to fact check.
It's everywhere else.
It's
Might
everywhere.
as well do it here, right?
It's everywhere. Someone says, take the meat and throw out the bones.
Yes.
And so I think having these information channels is beneficial.
Yeah.
But that relationship
100%.
is yeah.
And I always tell people, go talk to multiple folks,
Yes.
right? And see who you like and who you build a relationship, who you can see yourself working with. And if you're getting pressured into investments that you're not comfortable with or you don't like where it's going, find somebody that will work with you, right?
Absolutely. I mean, again, as I mentioned, one of the most valuable things to me about working with individuals is that we're building a mutually beneficial relationship. I want the people that I work with to trust me and know that I have their best interest at heart. But I also want to be able to trust that the people that I'm working with are going to listen to that advice that we're giving to help them reach their goals.
So now, LaToya, I like to go into one of my favorite topics of finances, which is the power of compound interest, right? And we see compound interest work negatively against a lot of people through credit card debt. And I'm a fan of credit cards if they're used wisely and responsibly, right, for building credit. But it often hurts many people. But I think in the investment side, it's such a powerful force. And I wanted to get from a wealth advisor's perspective, what is compound interest and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so essentially what it means to me, I like to reference what Albert Einstein said about compound interest. It's the 8th wonder of the world, which is what he said. And he said that those that get it, earn it. Those that don't, pay it. And really, essentially what it does is it allows you to earn money on the money that you've earned. And so a simple example, let's just look at someone that's depositing $1,000 into an interest-bearing account. With simple interest, after 1 year, someone depositing $1,000, earning a 5% interest rate, after that year, that's going to be $50 that they've earned, right? With compound interest, after the first year, they'll earn $50, but after their second year, they'll earn about $52. So now they've got $1,102.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like a lot of money, right? Just a couple bucks more. But let's take that into a broader scale. Let's look at a 10-year period of that $1,000 earning 5%. Simple interest, that would only be $1,500. Compound interest, we're looking at a little over $1,600. Again, still not blown away by those figures, right? Now let's look at it at a broader scale. $10,000 being saved in a retirement account for 40 years. Okay, without the power of compound interest, someone just earning simple interest, we're looking at $30,000.
Yeah, because it's the same amount of interest every year.
Same
it's
amount
not
of
going to
interest
go up,
every year.
not going to
It's
go
not going to go up, it's not going to go down. The power of compound interest for that same $10,000 deposit over the course of that 40-year retirement, it's over $70,000. So it's a $40,000 difference. It's a huge advantage for someone to take advantage of the benefits of compound interest. It's so valuable for all investors.
I think that's a good point. And like you said, you don't notice it right away, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing 1,000 at 10%, right, it's $100
Yeah.
every year. But what you'll notice with compound is that principal balance, the amount that you start with every year is higher.
Yes.
So when you look at a long-term, average worker works, 40 years
Yeah.
in their lifetime. And I think the reason most people get out of investing, from a retirement perspective, is they're not seeing the big impact early. But when you look at that curve, once somebody's been with an employer, let's just say they stay with an employer, and they're at that 15, 20-year mark, you really start to see that curve going up as you get closer. So, if you're out there listening and you're not seeing your retirement balance growing as quick as you want, it's a journey, it's a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. And I think, there's a lot of calculators out there, you can see it, but it's so powerful when you're earning money on your money because, if I just throw my money in a regular deposit account or a mattress, right, I'm not going to earn any money in my mattress. I always tell people in a savings account, 6 months worth of expenses. After that, in my opinion, I look at an investment strategy just because I want to earn money. And, even during tough times, and I think what I'd like to do is we'll put a clip on the screen of the lifetime stock market performance. And it's only gone up over the years, retrospectively, over the course of time. Are you going to have dips in the market? Yeah. And you're going to have those things. But it's that long haul journey of earning, money. Because now when the market's at an all time high, I look at my balances. I look at my kids' college accounts. I look at my retirement plan because I know I've made money. Now, if we've dropped, I'm not going to look at it because I emotionally, I lose money and I don't want to make a different choice of that investment strategy. But it is that power of that long-term investing that I think most people don't take advantage of soon enough, especially with retirement. So I always say, if you're working and they offer a retirement plan and you haven't signed up, start today. So in this journey where people are making decisions, most time at a moment's notice, it seems like, making those quick, rational decisions. What are your thoughts on how do I avoid that type of scenario so that I can benefit from all this stuff?
Yeah, we talked about people getting information from the internet or the emotion that comes with making those decisions. And again, I think this is really where having a financial advisor, a wealth planner working with you really helps to maximize making those financial decisions. We're really going to act like a sounding board. Take those emotions out of making the decision and understand that we've set up a long-term plan. Again, this isn't a sprint. We've got goals to accomplish and to reach. And if the decisions that we're making today do not align with those long-term goals, do we really need to make that decision? So that's kind of how the approach I take.
Yeah, that's why having somebody to be at your side and to kind of, a lot of times people just need reassurance of what they're doing is right. Mm-hmm. I get that so much. And I think that that is a big piece. And what I love about the market and 401ks and investments is, you might see a good deal at a financial institution on a CD rate or whatnot. But even during tough times, when things bounce back, the amount of interest the interest rate that people can earn on their money is astonishing. I remember during COVID, a lot of people were like, I'm pulling my money out of the market or I'm cutting back on my contributions. And I'm like, I talked to my wife about this to get a little personal. And when the market was coming down during the COVID times, it's like, let's put a little bit more in. And then, fast forward 3-6 months later, it was all-time high. And it's remembering, don't get wrapped up in the current moment, even if it's a tough time, even during the '08 crisis, right? Things bounce back. And remember that you're in it for the long haul.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's definitely what individuals have to remember. And again, that we're almost acting like coaches in that period, coaching people through those volatile times.
So on this topic of compound interest, we've mentioned 401k, which is an easy one that people can sign up through their employer. But what are some other ways that people can take advantage of compound interest to benefit them to try to get on a strategy of building wealth?
So certainly, Old National Bank, looking at some of our money market options to take advantage of some of those compound interest options. For people that are looking at more long-term investment strategies, they may consider bonds. Purchasing bonds in their investment portfolio. Those are just a couple of ways that individuals can take advantage of being on the earning side.
So just putting that portfolio together that you mentioned, whatever their risk tolerance is, right? If you're more conservative, there's options with your advisor. If you want to be more aggressive, but mixing that up, there's options to do that. So like you mentioned earlier, if somebody gets an inheritance or if somebody wins the lottery, right? A lot of people go out, and I've worked with people that have won the lottery before, and then they've told me the sad story how it was gone in 5 years. And in circumstances like that, how important is it to have an advisor when that inheritance gets handed over or maybe a windfall comes your way, rather than just, start buying or just dump it in a savings account? There is that ability to take that money to earn money in those situations. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And again, that's where the going back to square one of planning comes in. So for someone that's getting a windfall, their habits have not been built around that amount of money that's come in. So again, we want to take a pause. So my advice is always, if it hasn't been something that you've needed in your daily life up until this point, do you really need it right now? So let's just take some time and think about it for 30 days before we make that any spending decisions. But again, getting back to square one, and let's make a plan. So now I have these assets. How can life look different? How can I plan to have an even more successful financial future, not just for myself? What we want to now start thinking about is legacy. What can I do for my children or my grandchildren? Or how can I be philanthropic with these dollars and make a difference in the community that I live in?
I love that. And that's what my wife and I talk about a lot, is what can we leave our kids? And because I think when you do that too, you're also teaching your children about responsible money patterns and things like that, because kids look up to their parents as role models. So let's be that role model financially too, right? So, okay, wonderful. So I know we can't get into like specific investment strategies or things like that, but I think the big piece that you mentioned earlier is it's never too young to start. So can you go into a little bit, LaToya, about the power of compound interest, but starting at a young age, and why the time value of money is so important if you can start younger?
Absolutely. There are tools on the internet that individuals can plug in. If they took $100 a paycheck or $100 a month and saved in their 401k, what those impacts would look like. And, to be honest with you, Ben, I've got two teenagers myself. I've got a 15-year-old daughter and a 19-year-old son, and both of them, believe it or not, have the ability to contribute to a 403Bs, similar to 401ks, just nonprofit organizations. And so they're both making contributions in. Now, they're small amounts, $5 here, $10 there. But the benefit is that those assets, as opposed to someone that's starting at 25 years old, they're going to be in there for 50 years. So it's the duration of time that they're leaving those assets exposed to the market that's really going to have the most beneficial impact for them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. My oldest son, Jace, he's 9. And I joked with this, I think, with Moose at one time on the previous podcast, but he was saying, Dad, I'm glad you opened me a savings account, but when can I start earning some compound interest? And I'm like, well, how did you learn about this? Watching YouTube videos and things like that. But I love it that kids are interested in this. And one thing I think people do that I would recommend to make an adjustment on is people work really hard every year to earn a raise, right? And I think nationally, statistically, the average raise is around 2.5% to 3%. So let's just hypothetically say it's 3%. People get a 3% raise. What do most people do? They change their lifestyle, right? They adjust their cost of living. My suggestion is take a percentage off that and shove it into your retirement account. You're still bringing home 2% extra money, but you're not noticing that extra amount. But even to your point, that little bit extra can add up to be a lot over time.
Yeah. And I certainly suggest that people, if they have the option in their retirement account, automate it. If you do an automated increase, I think that's the most beneficial thing that you can do for yourself, because if it's planned, you're never going to miss it.
You're always going to come back and say, maybe I'll start next year, right? I have mine set up to go 1% every year, and it just makes it easier. And for me, starting as a young college student, I delayed it a little bit. So for all our listeners, if you're young, my recommendation, my opinion, not giving guidance, but start as young as you can.
Absolutely.
It's just, it's powerful, and the quicker you can get. On that note, let me ask that. I've seen what experts suggest is the amount to contribute to something in a retirement. I've heard 15% is the goal. Is that what you hear? Or is there a suggested a goal that people could aim for?
Yeah, so it's that between 10 and 15% of your income is really where you want to be. And if that's not doable, think about if you're working for a company that offers an employer match, you at least want to take advantage of the employer match. It's like leaving free money on the table if you're not taking advantage of it. And again, on day one, if it's offered at your employer, sign up. Working for, again, retirement record keepers for as long as I did, you wouldn't believe the amount of people that would come and say, I wish that I would have started this on day one. I said I took the paperwork home and I said that I was going to come back and bring it back. Most people, they don't do it. So as soon as you have the ability to make contributions in, take advantage of automation. And do as much as you can for as long as you can.
It's interesting. As I teach all over our footprint, I always ask the question, if you were to learn one thing differently, and every adult that I've worked with, I think, has said, I wish I would have started saving earlier. So for our followers out there and listeners, right, it's never too young to start. So to example that employee match for people that may not know. So let's say your company gives a 5% match. Dollar for dollar. So if they're offering that, the bare minimum to put in is 5%. Otherwise, you're losing free money out there.
That's right.
So,
and that's like that raise you were talking about. That's 100%. Really giving yourself a raise.
Love the discussion. One thing I like to do, LaToya, when we wrap these podcasts up is to get to know a little personal side again of you. So we're going to do a lightning round. I've got 5 questions that I want to ask you. We'll go by one, kind of gut feeling answer, dive into as much as you want. But So question number 1 for LaToya, what's the most valuable lesson that you've learned in your career of life so far?
So the most valuable lesson that I've learned is always be investing your time, your money, and your thoughts. You're always investing. So always be doing that. How you're spending your time, who you're spending your time with, all of that matters. Always be investing.
Love it. Number 2, if you could instantly master any skill, what would it be and why?
If I could instantly, I'm kind of an introvert, so I'm an introverted extrovert. So if I could master any skill, it would be, I've got this, I think he was on your podcast, the last guy, Musa. Musa Ibrahim. He's just like this masterful networker. And so just to be able to go into a room and light up a room the way he does, that's the skill I'd master.
I could see you doing that,
really?
though. Yeah, I do. All right, number 3, LaToya, what is your go-to activity or hobby when you need to rewind or or relax or unwind?
My go-to as an introvert, it's reading, curling up with a good book, and I read anything and everything. And my kids call me a D1 reader.
I like that.
I love to read. I love novels. I love crime stories. I just love to read.
Any favorite book that you've got?
Oh gosh, my favorite book is a book that I read every year. I read it as a little girl, and it's called Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. And it's just one of those books that bring me back to childhood that I love to read.
Well, fantastic. I think reading's a great thing, and I wish people do more of it, 100%. Number 4, who has been the most influential person in your life and why?
Oh gosh, it's really hard for me to say one person. I think the most influential people in my life are the women that have been in my life. So my mother, my grandmothers, and my aunts. They're just amazing, amazing women. And actually, both of my grandmothers, they're both called Tiny. Both their nicknames were Tiny. Imagine that. So the 2 Tinies actually both banked at Old National Bank.
Did they?
It's so interesting that this bank has been a part of my life for my entire life. And so, the all of the women that have been in my life they're just amazing, and they support me in just amazing ways. So the women in my life.
Well, good. Yeah. Good. And number 5, what's one piece of advice that you would like to go back and give to your younger self, LaToya?
Slow down. It's a journey.
Life goes by quick, doesn't it?
It goes by quick. Slow down. We have a saying here at Old National Bank, and I think it's probably on everyone's desk. Be here now. Our lives move so fast. We're in so many things. I know you mentioned you have a couple of kids. I've got a couple, and their activities can keep you busy.
Every day.
But man, just being in this moment, being present, being here now, and just slow down and enjoy it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, LaToya, I can't thank you enough for being a guest on our Real Life Finance podcast. It's always good to talk to you. And as we talked earlier, for folks out there, go talk to find somebody that you like. So if you're in the Indianapolis market, they can give you a call, reach out, right?
Happy to talk.
Awesome. Well, I do thank you for your time and
Absolutely.
appreciate you being here today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben. It's been
All
great.